There's a lot of JRPGs out there. Some more popular than others, and some that aren't as well known but definitely should be. Parasite Eve falls into the latter category, unfortunately. I streamed this game about a year ago now, and let me tell you, it's hands down one of the best JRPGs that I've ever played. I really wish I would have played the game sooner, but I just never had an interest in trying it out. When Parasite Eve was published in the tail end of the 1990s, it was probably a game that every single Squaresoft fan had heard of. But I think Parasite Eve was a little misgenred, which might have had a negative impact on its popularity when it was released. It was advertised by gaming magazines as the Resident Evil of RPGs. In truth, Parasite Eve isn't much of a survival horror game, or even a true horror game for that matter. I mean, sure, there are definitely some parts of it that are a little spooky, but nowhere near the same level as Resi. I'd say the plot of the game is similar to that of a suspense/detective drama. And with the game taking place in New York, it makes you feel like you're in some kind of really strange episode of Law & Order. Although Parasite Eve enjoys cult-like status among PS1 RPG enthusiasts, is it really deserving of all the praise? Is it a game worth remastering? And is one even likely? As always, let's dive in and find out. Now, like always, we must decide if a remake or a remaster would best suit Parasite Eve. Now, I'm going to suggest something a little different this time. I believe both a remake and a remaster would work perfectly for Parasite Eve. Now, I'm not saying that both should be done, but just that if either were to happen, it would work equally as well for Parasite Eve. Or alternatively, if both aspects of a remake and a remaster were incorporated simultaneously. I'll try to explain what I mean later on in the episode, but for now, let's get into the history of Parasite Eve's conception. Parasite Eve is a 1998 action role-playing horror game developed and published by Square, who at the time were called Squaresoft. Y'all remember Squaresoft, I miss them. Parasite Eve is based on the acclaimed Japanese novel of the same name, which was published in 1995. The game serves as a sequel to the book, citing major events in the novel while also revealing that Aya's biological mother is Mariko Anzai, the girl Eve chose to be her host in the novel. Parasite Eve was produced by Hironobu Sakaguchi and directed by Takashi Tokita. 2 years or so were spent on development, including pre-planning. Sakaguchi created the story outline himself. While doing so, he was committed to not watch any movies so he wouldn't be influenced by them. Now that's dedication. The game was initially supposed to take place in Tokyo and serve as a more direct sequel to the book. But Sakaguchi recommended moving the setting to New York City instead. And I'm glad they went with this change, because New York as a setting is truly what makes Parasite Eve a unique JRPG. Unlike previous Square games, Parasite Eve's development team was made up of both American and Japanese employees, with the majority of the game's creation taking place in the US. Aya's creation I find to be particularly interesting, as she was originally designed to be completely different. Sakaguchi didn't like her original concept art, as he wanted a long-haired beauty like Aerith from Final Fantasy VII. I can't blame you, Sakaguchi, my man. But get this. At the time, Sakaguchi was creating another unspecified character for a different project who sported short hair. He got confused while designing them and accidentally combined the two designs, creating the Aya we all know and love today. The story of Parasite Eve is as engaging and intricate as you'd expect from a Squaresoft title. The story centers around our beautiful protagonist Aya Bray, who is also a New York City police officer. In my playthrough, I called her Jane, and because of that, I'll continue to refer to her as such in this review. She'll always be Jane to me, damn it, and that's the end of it. Our story begins in an opera, where things quickly take a turn for the worse. Good lord, man!
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
The cause of all this chaos? That would be none other than our main antagonist, Eve. Why are you looking at me like that? So what's her deal? And why is Jane unaffected by the spontaneous combustion? It's explained later, of course, but for now we're left in mystery as to who this Eve creature is, and how they're able to do crazy things that blur the line between reality and magic. The event at the opera also awakens something within Jane that only gets stronger as the game goes on. The story takes place over the course of a week, and most of it is spent pursuing Eve all across New York City trying to stop her next diabolical scheme, which ranges from blowing up a hospital to melting 50 innocent people into a fine paste. And right around Christmas time too, man, I'm getting major Die Hard vibes here. Thankfully, Jane is not alone through all this. The supporting cast includes Maida, a scientist from Japan who's somewhat of a connector to the original book, Baker the police chief, Taurus Owens, the anti-gun cop, go figure, Wayne the pro-gun cop, who's basically the weapons store throughout the game, and last but certainly not least, the speed demon from hell himself, Daniel. You might be wondering why we're calling him the speed demon in this review. Well guys, I mean, look at how fast he drives his cars. This is not safe. Hey Daniel, you think you could take me across the bridge real quick? I kinda gotta get home and finish this review. Anyway, when we first meet with Maida, he explains how an incident occurred in Japan some years ago that was similar to the recent events here in New York. He says that a scientist's wife was in a car accident, and the scientist tried to culture his wife's liver cells to keep her alive. He called the liver cells Eve, but soon found that the liver cells multiplied, and the mitochondria took over her body completely. Ah yes, the mitochondria. They're another big plot point I almost forgot to mention. Dr. Clamp, who's another antagonist in the story, believes that the mitochondria are separate entities from humans, with a will of their own, and also able to produce mass amounts of power when activated at the same time. 200,000 volts of power to be exact.
Holy shit!
As crazy as that sounds, it would explain both Eve and Jane's mysterious powers. After the scientist's wife was taken over by the mitochondria, Maida explains that it attempted to give birth to the ultimate being. What's this mean? I don't know, but it's probably not good. It turns out that the wife was an organ donor and her kidneys were transplanted into a young girl, who was then used to also give birth to another ultimate being. Wait, how could there be two ultimate beings? Eventually, the mother died because of a cellular rebellion due to the Eve mitochondria not being able to fully take over the cells from the father's mitochondria. Trust me, I'm just as confused as y'all are. All this is a very short synopsis of the original book that the game is based on, and how the events of that book connect to the main story here. Jane herself has a connection to the story that, at this point, she doesn't know about. But we'll get into that soon enough. After performing a few tests, Maida discovers that Eve's mitochondria is different from regular mitochondria. Maida tests Jane's cells as well, and finds that Eve's mitochondria have indeed invaded her cells, but also that Jane's mitochondria is actively fighting them off. Eve then attacks the precinct as a distraction for her next diabolical scheme. Maida believes that her body is starting to break down, so this means she needs to begin the process of giving birth to, you guessed it, the ultimate being. And to do this, she needs to hijack some sperm from the local hospital.
That's disgusting.
Throughout the game, Jane has these visions of a young girl who she believes to be Maya, her younger sister, who died in a car accident with her mother some years ago. And she sees plenty of these visions at the hospital when she goes there. After many grueling battles and scary puzzles, Jane discovers that her mother, sister, and Melissa, who was the host for the current Eve, were all admitted to the hospital for treatment on the same day. Coincidence?
I think not!
Unfortunately, Eve is successful in kidnapping the sperm. Gross. And then gets away. It's now down to Jane and the others to try to stop the ultimate being from being born. Or it could mean the end of humanity. They discover Melissa, again the host for Eve, was making late-night visits to Dr. Clamp at the museum. And with this, we finally conclude that Dr. Clamp has something to do with all this. Gee, guys, you think? The search leads Jane to Chinatown, where she finds something pretty horrifying. Remember when Eve melted 50 people into a human smoothie that one time? Yeah, well, apparently it's sentient, and it's back. Jane flushes it out to prevent it from infecting all of New York City, and the blob makes its way to the museum. Heading back there, Jane discovers that all the fossils have come to life, a result of the blob taking control of them. This part of the game is like Dino Crisis, but 10 times scarier. I gotta say, guys, the museum was definitely my favorite level in the whole game. The T-Rex boss is pretty iconic too. We run into Maida, who's been checking out Clamp's lab, and he says that he's discovered Maya's blood serum in the freezer, which was again Jane's younger sister. Apparently, Dr. Clamp has been culturing her liver cells for years. In addition to that, he's been researching artificial sperm that Eve could use to not have to worry about a cellular rebellion from the father's mitochondria. With all this incriminating evidence, it's almost like Clamp is just as big of an antagonist as Eve, maybe even bigger. And speak of the devil, Clamp busts in the room just as Jane and Maida are talking and tries to stab Jane with a knife. Look out, Jane!
Man, what the fuck that? Hold on, bro. I think he got a knife. Nothing. Shit.
Luckily, Daniel busts in just in time to save the day.
You got knocked the fuck out!
Bam! God damn, Daniel! I guess those hands are just as fast as you're driving. Oh, well, it wasn't the first time.
Randy Orton in deep trouble here. We're back live on Monday Night Raw. Never heard of a match like this. Look at Randy Orton slithering. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
Defeated, Dr. Clamp finally gives up the ghost and admits to everything. Like classic Scooby-Doo villain style, guys, it's pretty great. He's even been helping Eve to create the ultimate being. Okay, dude, I can understand experimenting for the sake of science, but this has gone way too far. Dr. Clamp then has Eve use her combustion magic to try and kill everyone. But thankfully, Daniel activates the nitro boost and tosses himself and Maida out the window at the speed of sound. Honestly, when I first saw this scene, I was cracking up. The combustion, of course, doesn't affect Jane, and she moves on to find Eve about to give birth.
Long titty, no nipple having ass, bitch.
We're too late, though, and the final battle with Eve begins among the wreckage of the Statue of Liberty. You sons of bitches! You blew it all to hell! Eve gloats that mitochondria have been in control the entire time, allowing humans to flourish and create an environment perfect for them, only serving as hosts for transportation. What a crock of shit. We beat Eve's ass one final time and things seem to be over. That is until we learn that the giant mass of shit Eve splattered across Manhattan was actually a uterus for the ultimate being. And it's just been born. Well, let's go beat its ass. It evolves at a tremendous rate. Jane uses her powers to combat the monstrosity, but the ultimate being proves to be too ultimate for Jane to handle. Something has to be pointed out here, guys. Alright. I know I got the face cam up. I'm going to lower the face cam in a second, but when I do, I really need you guys to look at something, okay? Look at the sack on this guy. Can we get a zoom in on that, boys? Can we get a zoom in? Can we? He has the ultimate sack. He has the ultimate sack, guys. We cannot defeat this motherfucker. Luckily, Maida came up with a plan to create bullets with Jane's cells inside them to use against the creature. The introduction of Jane's cells would destabilize the mitochondria within the ultimate being and cause a cellular rebellion. Maida, you're a genius! Daniel delivers the bullets to Jane and this time goes so fast that he bursts into flames. God damn, Daniel, ease off the nos, my dude! The bullets work their magic and weaken the monster to the point where we can lure it into a trap and blow its ass all the way to Kingdom Come. This chase sequence is something else, Box Pros, I'm telling you. Whew, with the threat finally being over, Maida reveals that part of Maya was with Jane all along. After the car accident, a piece of Maya was transplanted into Jane, as well as Melissa. Specifically, her right eye. He suggests it may be the reason Jane saw visions of Maya, but more importantly, that Maya's mitochondria likely experienced a different evolutionary change within Jane, and lived symbiotically. So basically, Jane was the anti-Eve. Pretty nutty stuff. In the end, the gang visits the opera again to make up for Christmas Eve, but during the show, something awakens within Jane and spreads to the rest of the crowd. What a strange ending. It's not the only ending, however. In the New Game Plus mode, Jane visits the Chrysler Building, which is pretty much a bonus dungeon with the true endgame content. The baddest of the baddies can be found in this place, but we'll go into more details talking about it in the gameplay section of this review. Jane climbs the gauntlet of 77 floors and discovers the original Eve in Maya's body at the top. Jane defeats her, but in doing so, Eve awakens Jane's mitochondria, which has become stronger than ever. Maya also awakens the mitochondria as well and battles for control with Eve, eventually defeating her. This in turn makes Jane lose her powers, but she gains a new connection with her little sister that she never thought was possible. And that's 2 insane endings to 1 insane story. Which ending is the canon though? Well, you got me. I like to think it's the ending at the top of the Chrysler Building. The theater ending is just too ominous and doesn't translate well into the second game. Well, then again, from what I've heard, neither ending translates well into the second game, but that's a talk for another time. In the remake, they should emphasize which ending is the canon, or they could just leave it up to player interpretation. Now, I'm no scientist, but I'm pretty sure that most of the events that take place in this game are biologically impossible. And thank God for that. But overall, the story of Parasite Eve is amazing, and while I've never read the original book, playing the game really makes me want to give it a read sometime. The whole aspect of taking something as forgettable as the powerhouse of the cell and making it into a catalytic boogeyman is really clever. Parasite Eve is a detective horror joyride of twists and turns that'll have your head spinning faster than Daniel can drive a car. In the remake, I wouldn't change one thing about the overall story. Maybe a few dialogue touch-ups and some added dialogue to make the story a little easier to understand, but other than that, it's perfect as it is. The story in all its confusing yet captivating glory is great, but where the game truly shines is in its unique gameplay style. It combines turn-based style gameplay with live-action movement in a fashion that is akin to more modern titles, making Parasite Eve's gameplay truly ahead of its time. Because of this, I believe the core mechanics of the battle system should be left the same in the remake. It would be something along the lines of Final Fantasy VII Remake's battle system. Because for all its flaws, one thing I can praise about the Final Fantasy VII Remake is its battle system. As with most other classic JRPGs, leveling up and customizing stats and equipment is an important component of the gameplay. Guns are the primary weaponry of choice in this game, and let me tell you, there's a lot of them. As an American, this makes me very excited. There's even bazookas, for God's sakes! And every single weapon you obtain is fully upgradable, from stats to special effects. Old equipment can be salvaged by using a tool, which allows you to either directly transfer stats such as attack, range, and bullet capacity, or you can choose to instead transfer a weapon trait, such as fire bullets, 2x command, or triple shot. This aspect of the game was truly the most fun for me. Finding a weapon with a brand new effect on it brought me an immeasurable amount of gaming satisfaction. The same is true for the equipment. While Jane's mitochondria powers may allow her to power up, the major method to improve your defenses is through your armor, and it's just as fun and diverse as the weapons. Speaking of diverse, the monsters you encounter in this game are uniquely horrifying, most of them being some form of mutilated animal. That freaking rat, man, I'll never unsee it. The cutscene animations for some of these creatures are just phenomenal, but we'll talk more about that in the graphics section. When it comes to the difficulty, Parasite Eve is right on the mark. The enemies in the game offer a very nice challenge and scale very well with the game's leveling system. And there's no shortage of challenging side bosses in this game, that's for sure. In the remake, the enemies should be left the same for the most part. New monsters could of course be added in with some new mechanics to mix things up though. Now while the enemies themselves might be fine, one thing that I feel could use some work is how you encounter those enemies. The encounter system in Parasite Eve is a bit unique. Encounter points are already decided on each map. If you run over the encounter spot, a battle will begin. Each encounter spot can only be activated one time each time you enter an area. To fight again, you'll have to re-enter the zone and run over the same spot again. Sometimes you have to leave the level entirely. This is one thing that feels a little bit outdated to me. Not the random encounters specifically, but just the fact that they're not actually random. In the remake, enemies should either already be visible and maybe even avoidable, or appear randomly by consequence of how many steps you've taken. You know, just like a classic JRPG. Keeping the encounters random while not adhering to more modern standards, I think is important for one big reason: the black and white transition. What? No. No. Oh yeah. Especially with that sudden heartbeat sound effect, it really makes you go, oh shit, here comes a fight. And leaves you wondering for those few seconds, what's it gonna be? Until of course you start to memorize what enemies spawn where because of the fixed spawn locations, and then the mystery is gone. Yet another reason I think encounters should be truly random in this game. But yeah, the black and white transitions into battle are a staple effect of Parasite Eve, and should definitely remain the same in the remake. Once you've entered a battle, you'll appear in front of your enemies and will be able to move freely. Once your blue ATB gauge fills, you can either attack or open your menu to use items, change equipment, or cast spells. Casting spells uses up Parasite Energy, which is another gauge that you'll see in the corner of your screen. Parasite Energy recharges naturally on its own, but each time you cast a spell, the recharge rate lowers, eventually getting to the point where it stops recharging altogether. Another option you have when your ATB gauge fills is to of course hit the attack button, which causes a green spear to appear around Jane. The spear represents your effective attack range in the game, and the size of it depends on your gun's range stat. Enemies within the spear will be targetable with a bright red circle and will receive full damage if struck. Outside the sphere, enemies will be targeted with a dark blackish red circle and will most likely avoid your attacks or receive extremely minor damage if they are struck. The battle flow itself consists of running around and waiting for your ATB gauge to fill up while evading enemy attacks in between. When you defeat your enemies, you are rewarded with XP, ammo, and whatever else. Just like any other classic JRPG. What do you know? That's another thing. Ammo in this game is finite, so managing your ammo stores is very vital, unless you want to get stuck using that crappy police baton. I'm telling you guys, aside from being able to steal, that thing sucks. When you level up, you also automatically gain points in various skills, such as faster ATB gauge, more inventory spaces, even more Parasite Eve energy, as well as bonus points, which you can assign to any skill of your choice. And who doesn't like bonus points, you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Anyway, this part of the system was very enjoyable, and made leveling up all the more fun. It was akin to when you level in an MMO and get a new talent point into your build. The main faculties of the battle system should be left the same for the remake, with only a few changes in the way of new skills and abilities perhaps. Movement could of course be made more fluid as well, and maybe adding an over-the-shoulder view as an option for the camera would also mix things up. Hell, maybe even a first-person mode. Finally, I want to talk about the New Game Plus mode. Another feature that puts Parasite Eve ahead of its time. New Game Plus offers a replay of the game with tougher enemies and new bosses, and even offers a bonus ending to the game which many consider to be the true ending. Aside from keeping your best weapon and best armor from your previous playthrough, the staple of the New Game Plus mode is the Chrysler Building. Ah yes, the good old Chrysler Building. It's probably one of Manhattan's most famous skyscrapers, as it makes many a cameo appearance in movies and other media. Despite this, the building never appears as a main setting in any of them, prompting architect and author James Sanders to quip that it should win the award for Best Supporting Skyscraper. That's pretty funny. However, Parasite Eve is probably the only media where the Chrysler Building does take a center stage. I mean, it's even mentioned briefly in the Chrysler Building's Wikipedia page. I mean, that's pretty goddamn awesome, guys. With 77 floors of the most brutal enemies and bosses in the game, the Chrysler Building is the toughest challenge that Parasite Eve has to offer. And when I say the enemies are brutal, I mean it. Those chest monsters still haunt my dreams. The Chrysler Building also has within it the best weapons and equipment in the game. Well, the true best weapons are obtained by grinding parts for Wayne. But what I'm really talking about are the weapon effects. The best of the best are here, like attack all enemies and the quick draw effect. Each level is kinda like a maze, with the layout changing every time you play, so no two layouts of the Chrysler Building are ever the same. Because of this, there's no definitive map or guide for navigating the Chrysler Building. You just have to either memorize the layouts of the floors like I did, or actually draw out your own map. Now, it sounds a lot worse than it actually is. The layouts don't get that hard to navigate until the last few floors, really. There's only two things you're looking for as well on any given floor, and that's the storeroom and the staircase to the next floor. Well, there's also the elevator, but that's mostly just for getting back down. Every 10 levels you encounter a boss, and these baddies are the toughest in the game by far. Most of them have pretty specific mechanics though, that if you follow them, allow you to beat the boss fairly easily. But I know how all you scrubs can't help but stand in the fire, oh my god. Upon their defeat, they drop a keycard which allows you to access the elevator to get back up to that floor. What, you thought you had to do the Chrysler Building all in one shot? Now that would be a challenge. Now in all my escapades through the Chrysler Building, I really only ran into one major problem. And it was kind of my fault, but hear me out. Some of you may remember this from the streaming series, but for those of you who don't, here's what happened. When I beat one of the bosses on, I believe it was the 40th or 50th floor, my inventory was full, so the keycard didn't go right into my inventory automatically, like most items usually do. Wait, no. Oh, I didn't grab it! Wait, no, I didn't grab it! Oh shit, because my inventory was full! You see, when your inventory is full, you must replace an item in your current inventory, or you simply won't pick it up. In the remake, I really think there should be some kind of warning. Like, are you sure you want to discard this item? Like, are you really sure? Like, are you definitely positively sure you want to discard this item? Like, 50 pop-ups, I don't care, because damn was this inconvenient. So what happened? I clicked X too fast is what happened, and ended up dropping the card. So I had to climb all the way back down 10 floors, and then had to walk back up 10 floors again to continue the building. It was really, really tedious. Like next level tedious, guys. It was bad. Now again, it was kind of my fault for pressing X too quickly, but this was just such a harsh punishment for such a simple mistake. Again, in the remake, they could add a menu prompt when you're going to drop an item, and maybe also make it to where you can pick up the key cards if you do drop them accidentally. Because damn, those things are important. But besides all that, the Chrysler Building is pretty great. It truly is a staple of the New York City skyline, and it wasn't a disappointment here in Parasite Eve. It's a really fun challenge for New Game Plus, and should definitely be left in the remake. I would perhaps add a few more new interesting elements to the Chrysler Building in ways of puzzles or maybe more storerooms. I would even say that entirely new bonus dungeons just as challenging should be added to New Game Plus. Imagine the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building being a dungeon. Maybe even the World Trade Center. Okay, maybe that's going a little too far. But overall, the gameplay in Parasite Eve is engaging and tons of fun. It offers a unique spin on typical JRPG gameplay, and has quirky and interesting elements that really makes it stand out among other games of the era. The only thing I would say is more quirky and interesting than the gameplay is the graphics. Final Fantasy VIII is the closest analogy I can make for Parasite Eve's graphics. I'm not kidding, the game pretty much is Final Fantasy VIII with new gameplay elements. Or at least that's how it looks. Let me explain. Parasite Eve has a lot in common with Final Fantasy VIII. Tall character models, pre-rendered hand-drawn backgrounds, weird resi camera angles, which were also present in Final Fantasy VIII, and pretty much the same FMV quality. Hell, I'd even wager the game uses Final Fantasy VIII's engine in its entirety, or at the very least a modified version of it. Now, I know it sounds like I'm complaining, but while the game may look similar to Final Fantasy VIII, Parasite Eve takes all this and makes it truly something unique to itself. The environments look great with a lot of detail. Despite there again being a lot of pre-rendered backgrounds, they're done up pretty well. Usable or interactable objects in the game sort of float above the pre-rendered backgrounds, so you can easily spot parts of the environment that aren't pre-rendered. This, of course, makes it very easy to spot objects that you can pick up and interact with. It also has the downside of being against the backgrounds and taking you out of the immersion a little bit when you realize that you're playing a goddamn video game. But it's not too big a deal. The color palettes in the game are very dark and gritty, mostly because this game takes place 90% of the time at night. And to be honest, New York is pretty dark and gritty all the time anyways, especially nowadays.
New York, baby! Boy!
I think it goes without saying that in the remake, the graphics would all be improved upon and probably look similar to Resident Evil 2's remake. I mean, imagine this scene, but with modern graphics. As terrifying as it would be, the horror visuals of this game would truly be something to behold in a remake. And yet another reason why this game needs one. Lastly, I'll talk about the music. Yoko Shimomura is truly a genius with the work she did for Square back in the day. And that genius really shines through here in Parasite Eve. To say that the music in Parasite Eve is atmospheric would be a little bit of an understatement. I believe the music plays a major role in the extraordinary ease of immersion you experience while playing. From the intro cinematic music that pumps you up to the beautifully dramatic theme of Jane herself, this game just has atmospheric beats for days. The battle music is one of the best I've ever heard in a JRPG. I mean, just listen to how catchy it is. Even scene by scene, the OST perfectly complements the game. It all simply flows so nicely. The scary parts are scary, and the sad parts are sad. I have absolutely nothing but good things to say about the soundtrack in this game. And I think it goes without saying that they should be preserved completely as is for the remake. As I always say, enhancing the sound is fine, but for the most part, they should remain the same. I mean, guys, just listen to this and try to tell me that it needs to be changed. I'm telling y'all, what a goddamn masterpiece. Parasite Eve is a stunning detective drama with twists and turns that'll keep you constantly on the edge of your seat. The gameplay is a fun and unique experience that is truly ahead of its time. The game has dark, expressive, and visceral graphics that, cranked up to 11 in a remaster, would truly be a sight to behold. And with a truly masterful and immersive soundtrack, Parasite Eve is a 10 out of 10 JRPG that every fan of the genre should play at least once. But does it deserve a remake? Should it be remade? Yes! Parasite Eve would be a true masterpiece of a remake if done properly. The groundwork is all there, they just gotta do it. But will they do it? Will we ever see a remake of Parasite Eve? Honestly, guys, I'm kinda on the fence about this one. On one hand, we haven't had anything from Parasite Eve since Third Birthday in 2010, and we all know how well that turned out. Still, Parasite Eve is a gold mine just waiting to be unearthed, and I think Square knows this. I mean, it won't happen anytime soon, but be hopeful, friends, for I believe that one day, the speed demon himself, Daniel, will make his full return in gloriously remastered 4K. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed episode 3 of Should It Be Remade? And do be sure to comment what you would like to see be remade, and maybe I'll make it the topic of episode 4. Until next time, Box Bros, I'll catch you later.